We're live.
We're live. Great.
Thank you everyone for joining us today. We've received an incredibly positive response to the interviews we've held with our members' senior leaders, especially with regards to their sharing of their knowledge and insights following COVID-19. Today I've got the pleasure of catching up with Richard Young, who I'm sure will be known to many of you. Richard is currently the chair of Silver Fern Farms Co-operative. He's a board member of Silver Fern Farms Limited. He also offers shareholder engagement advice to Primary Wool Co-operative. And like many of our cooperative members, as a sheep and beef farmer, aside from Silver Fern Farms, he's also a member of multiple cooperatives who are trusted partners. So I've just checked in with Richard beforehand, and he said that he's currently got membership with Balance, Rabobank, FMG and Farmlands, just to name a few. Anyway, we'll kick off. So Richard, like all of our members, your staff have had to move to new ways of working. How have you as a board worked with your leadership team to implement initiatives with such tight timelines?
Well, thanks, Roz. Thanks for having me here today to have a chat. So looking forward to that. Look, I think one of the most important things through a time of crisis is, to keep level-headed. So I think as a board, with our senior management team and our leadership team, it's about keeping a balanced and level-headed approach to things and working through that. We were lucky enough to be an essential service and continue to operate through lockdown, which was great and quite a privilege to do so. So, it's just about supporting our board and our leadership team to put the mechanisms in place to operate within the limitations that were put in by MPIs. So, and they did a great job. Our efficiencies from day one till when we finished our 2 metre distancing improved from sort of 50 to 60% of capacity up to 80 to 90%. So great progress in that space. And I suppose the impact that was on our members as farmers was, the processing space delays. So we had to make sure our communication with our members was good, sound, transparent and timely, so they could make those decisions on farm, do what they could do given the disruption that the processing delays were causing. So we had a great line of communications that we kept open. They were transparent, everyone knew what was going on, so we're all on the same page. So that was probably the most important things.
No, it's great to hear about the communication, because we've heard that from a number of our members as well. So in terms of your members, what's been the impact of deferring the dividend to Silver Fern Farms?
Look, I think there was an expectation with our members of a dividend. We had a good year last year. Silver Fern Farms Limited posted a $70 million profit. So there was an expectation there. And all intention was to pay that dividend, and that decision had been made at limited level to pay a dividend. As the shareholders of the business, the Cooperative and Shanghai Mailing went back to Silver Fern Farms Limited and said to them, we think it's best that you defer that dividend to give the business cash flow flexibility. And that was most important going through this. We're here for many years, not just for this year. So by deferring that, we gave the business confidence that they would get over the lump in a strong cash flow position. As far as our members went, it's a deferral, so there's still an expectation that a dividend will be paid if we can get through this hump. But the feedback's been hugely positive from members. They understand why it's been done and fully supportive of it.
Oh, that's great. And in terms of consumer behaviours, what have you seen that's noticeable in terms of changes?
Well, I think worldwide we've probably seen a food service sector that is almost gone. A hotel and restaurant trade. When we talk about food service, we've got to remember a part of the food service, grouping are likes of prisons and schools and hospitals. So that's remained, but certainly the dining out hotel and restaurant trade is almost non-existent. So we've seen a migration to retail. People have, instead of going out for their burgers, have taken the mince out of the supermarkets and taking it home and having their nachos and tacos and burgers at home.
I've included.
So we've certainly seen that. I think the disruption has been more in the supply chain as that has changed, and the ability for the supply chain to change quickly. So that's probably where the bottleneck has been, and where the holdups have been more so than the demand. And that's correcting itself every day. Look, I think we're extremely lucky that China has started to come back over the last month after their COVID issues, and have probably leveled out that demand, given that the rest of the world is, in a bit of state of crisis, especially through Europe and the US.
Yeah. And in terms of the export markets, which you just touched on, what are you actually doing from Silver Fern Farms to ensure that they remain functional?
Look, I think that's as much about the partnerships with our consumers and our customers. We're lucky that we have got strong partnerships with our consumers, and they've stood the test of time for many years, and have stood the test of time through this. So I couldn't emphasise enough the value in having strong partnerships with your customers through this. If you take China, for instance, through the disruption in January, we had no customer in China who never paid for product or turned product away. So it was all about relationships.
Right. And in terms of fast tracking, is there anything that you're specifically focused on in terms of making the most of a crisis, as we keep hearing?
Yeah, look, I think that's all about the disruption, and the disruption is across markets and within markets, and amongst all that is a whole lot of opportunity. I just take for an example, in New Zealand, we've moved to online sales in New Zealand through Gourmet Direct. So that's a new initiative we've just launched here. But that's across the world. That migration away from retail shopping, as we know, to retail shopping online. So certainly a lot of opportunity there. And I think a lot of it is just being about being nimble, and being really open to changing your operating model within a market and between markets is hugely important. And when I talk about changing, an operating model, I think every market's different. So we don't want to be too focused on, rolling the same mechanism out over multiple markets. We need to be nimble across markets and within markets. And in China in particular, we're lucky that we have got an office, and we have got staff on the ground in China and the US, two of our major markets. So that's helping extremely a lot as well. Yeah.
Oh, that's great to hear. And I guess finally, are there any areas that you feel government needs to take more action, and any suggested solutions that you see potentially being put in place?
Look, I think government have done a great job over COVID, and from a health perspective, and I think we've seen numbers come down to almost zero. I don't know what it was today, but a couple of days at none. So that's great, but there also is a time where we need to move and have some form of economic stimulus back to get the country going again. So my sense is we're there, personal opinion, but that's where I think we're at. And I think over the next period, how the government stimulate the economy is going to be really, really important, to balance what's going to be quite a large, not humanitarian, but quite a large social disruption as well. So we have to be mindful that we don't that we all try and pull each other up and pull each other through, and don't let anyone fall down the cracks through the bottom. So government have got a lot to do. Look, I think from a company perspective, if you talk about policy settings, I think the old perennials around the environment. I hope that we take a look at what's happened around the planet when urban dwelling or urban, manufacturing has stopped, and we've seen great reductions. And I think to continually blame the rural sector for environmental problems is a wee bit false, when we've seen what happens when we close down manufacturing and we close down cities. And So again, I think it's about shared responsibility for these things, and hopefully, you know, policy settings will be more shared than be targeted in the future.
Yeah, I think that the climate change aspect's been a real eye opener for a lot of people. Hey, Richard, thanks so much for your time today, and we appreciate that everyone's operating with so many unknowns at the moment, and it's creating a lot of uncertainty. So it's great to hear from individuals such as yourself, just to provide some confidence and, you know, recognising people aren't alone, as you said before. We don't want to lose anyone along the way. So I really appreciate that in terms of looking to a brighter future. In terms of Cooperative Business New Zealand, we're looking to continue to do these sorts of engagements with our senior leaders, and really appreciate anyone, if you'd like to participate, just get in touch. And yeah, stay safe everyone, and thanks again, Richard.
Thanks, Roz. Good stuff.